Most players think this guy is a whale. And that's exactly what he wants you to think. His name is Alan Keating, and you've probably seen him in high-stakes stream games, splashing around in million-dollar pots like it's a home game. So I watched over 100 hours of his hands, looking for punts. But what I found may shock you. This might be the most misunderstood high-stakes player in the world, because underneath the chaos, the wild plays he makes, they are built on ruthless logic. In this video, I'm breaking down the 5 high-level skills Keating uses to crush and how you can steal them for your own game, even if you're just playing 2-5 at your local card room. Keating proves you don't need GTO or a nitty style to win big. You can be perceived as the maniac and still take everyone's money. Let's jump in. All right, so the first thing Keating does at a super high level, he just has absolutely beautiful bluff sizing. So let's jump into a couple hands, then I'm gonna tie this all back together to the one skill he has that makes all of these pieces kind of come together. All right, so very first hand here, we see JR open from the hijack. We're playing 200, 400, 800. He opens to 2K. JRB gonna call in the cutoff, and now Keating here going to put in, let's just call it a light squeeze with 9 deuce off. Let's just get this clear. Is it profitable to squeeze with this hand long term? No, of course not. It's not going to be profitable to squeeze with 9 deuce off. But if you do have a post flop edge and you're going to be able to size appropriately, you can make this go from a huge losing squeeze to maybe just losing a little bit if you're very dialed in post flop. And if you're trying to bring action, curate this image as a maniac, a guy who's good for the game, sometimes you just got to get in there. So Keating squeezes, JR is going to continue, and JRB is going to get out of the way. So we are going heads up to a flop here. You see Keating giggling because he's got 9 deuce offsuit in a 3-bet pot. Flops absolutely nothing here on a queen high flop. Gonna continue here for 20 into 33, and JR is going to call. Offsuit king comes on the turn, so an overcard to the board at this point. And when JR checks it over, he's gonna go 40 into 74, which ensures that JR is gonna continue with queen X, have a weaker range getting to the river. The river is the innocuous 7 of diamonds. And now at this point, JR checks it over one more time. Here's the real magic of this hand. Keating now into 154K, bets 32,000 on this river. And we talk about this concept all the time. If our opponents have strong hands on the river that they're just not folding, using that small size here is absolutely going to print, because Keating's only goal here is to get hands like pocket 10s or ace high flush draws to fold. If JR does have a hand like king X of clubs or a 6 that he trapped with, he's just never folding these hands in a million years, and getting to the river, he does have some very strong hands. But because Keating chose this small size on the turn, JR's also going to get to the river with hands like pocket 9s, pocket 10s, queen X, ace high flush draws, jack high flush draws. All these hands are just going to fold if Keating breathes on the pot. So he doesn't actually have to go huge here to have a very profitable bluff spot. And you see here, JR does end up having ace 10 of clubs. He ends up raising on the river, but I don't want to be result oriented here. JR ends up raising. Keating just kind of giggles and folds his hand. He's like, oh, I guess I ran into it. And JR just turns his ace high into a bluff. I think this is a 10 out of 10 slam dunk sizing here on the river. And if you use this sizing in your local 2-5 or 5-10 game, players are just not going to turn their ace high flush draws or queen X or pocket 10s on this river into a bluff when the game is not streamed, when it's not high stakes, when you're not playing with guys who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This is just not going to happen. I think you can use this and bring this into your own game. When players get to the river with a very strong range and you get there with 8 high, 9 high, 10 high, you can just use a small bluff size instead of giving up to target the weak portions of their range, and it's going to be much more profitable than just giving up. Really like this sizing from Keating, even though in this specific scenario it did end up backfiring. All right, next hand here, we're playing 1K with a 2K big blind ante and a 4K straddle. We see Eric limping here in the small blind. Texas Mike going to bump it up in the big blind here to 25K. Keating looks down at ace jack in the 4K straddle. He is in there. Eric gets out of the way. We're going heads up to a flop. Pretty wet dynamic flop here. 3-4-5 with a couple of spades. Texas Mike going to c-bet small, and Keating is going to float with ace high here and a wheel draw. The 3 pairs here now on the turn. Texas Mike gonna double barrel, and Keating here in a wide versus wide configuration, just figuring that his ace high does have showdown value here, so he is going to continue once more. River is a 6, so now the backdoor flush gets there, and it brings out a one-liner to a straight as well. And you see, a lot of players in Keating's spot would just be like, okay, wide versus wide config. I called on the flop because I thought ace high could be good. I called on the turn because I thought ace high could be good. Now on this river, a lot of players would just check back in Keating's shoes here, and Keating actually decides to turn ace high into into a bluff. And this is actually a super advanced play because a lot of the times ace high is just going to be good here. But on this river, literally everything gets there. And when a recreational kind of passive player checks on the river from Texas Mike's spot here, they are checking to check call. But when an aggressive player like Texas Mike checks on this river, they are generally checking because they hate this card and they're probably going to fold to pressure even if they do have a decent hand here. Keating's gut shots get there, Keating's flush draws get there. If Texas Mike does have a hand like an overpair on this river, he's not going to be able to hang on because literally what does he beat on this river? And Keating knows this, so Keating actually decides to turn his showdown value into a bluff here 75, 80, 90% of the time. His ace high is just going to be good if the river goes check check. But if he bets here, he literally gets Texas Mike to fold everything because Keating understands on this river, if Texas Mike did get there with a straight or with a flush, he would continue betting. So when an aggressive player like Texas Mike checks on this river, he's just signaling, he's screaming at the top of his lungs,
hey, I never have a straight here. I never have a flush here.
So Keating realizes this. If I check here, I win 75, 80% of the time. If I bet here, I literally win 100% of the time because my opponent, who is a super aggressive player, never has a good hand when he checks in this spot. And I would imagine if the river was an offsuit 9 and Texas Mike checked, the Keating would just check back here. On this particular card, turning ace high into a bluff. So good. Really love this play from Keating. All right, let's do another one. Keating versus Texas Mike. In this one, Texas Mike is going to open to 8K in the cutoff, and Keating is going to call on the button. And you see here, we are over $2 million effective, playing 1K with a 2K. Straddle here in 2K big blind ante. King 10, and Texas Mike is going to c-bet here after raising pre-flop. And look at this, Keating is going to put in the raise with 4 high next to act on this board. We get a jack on the turn. Texas Mike is going to check it over. Keating, I guess, just figuring that Texas Mike, even 3 ways, just c-betting too much, and he's going to attack that right away. Now on the turn, going with a big bet, 80%, 90% pot here, just double barreling, and we see Texas Mike going to call once again. Queen of diamonds on the river. So everything gets there once again, and Keating here with just 4 high on this river is going to fire the triple barrel. He raises the flop, he doubles the turn, and this river looks super scary on the surface. Keating goes 215K, but Keating understands that he's just going to be able to get a lot of folds here. He can target trips, he can target 10X, Jack X, and we see here on this river, Texas Mike is going to show a king. He flips over a king, and he is going to put in the fold here. And so many players in this spot are just like,
well, I'm up against a sticky player. I'm never gonna get this guy to fold.
And that's bullshit, right? Texas Mike is as sticky as they come. This guy has trips, but when the board gets really scary, he just can't put Keating on a bluff. Even sticky players will make big folds when the board gets very scary. All right, next hand here, playing 500, 1K, 2K, and Ben is going to open to 5K here from early position. Rob gonna come along on the button here. Over to Keating in the straddle. He is in there with 9-6 of hearts. Of course, we are going 3 ways to a flop. Keating checks, Ben checks, and now Rob here on this flop is going to stab, and Keating is going to pick up on something that I think is really important in this flop. The pre-flop raiser checked, so Ben is going to be capped here, and when it checks over to the button, players in general are just going to stab too wide once the pre-flop raiser checks, and Keating is going to pounce on this. This is much different than if we were 5 ways and the pre-flop raiser checks, next to act stabs with 3 or 4 players left behind him, right? When it checks over to the button and the pre-flop raiser checks, it's going to be a really good spot to stab for the button. Keating understands this, and he's just going to apply pressure right now and start attacking with just backdoors. He's just got a couple backdoors in his hand. He is going to check raise, just understanding that Rob is probably stabbing too wide on the button when it checks over to him. We are going to a turn, and look at this, Keating picks up 0 equity. But that is not going to slow him down. He is going to keep firing here, understanding that if Rob has a hand like a 10, pocket 8s, pocket 7s, something like that, this turn going to make a lot of those hands uncomfortable and really not want to continue to a double barrel. Keating here is going to fire once again. He goes 70K. Could maybe be a little bit more precise with sizing here. I think there's a little bit in between, maybe one nitpick that I would have in this hand. If Rob has a hand like 10X, so you have one of 2 goals here on the turn. You either want a hand like Jack 10 to call, so you can get that hand to fold on the river, and if that's the goal here, you probably want to size a little bit smaller, maybe 40K, 50K, something like that. Or your goal here is to get all the 10X to fold, all the pocket 9s, all the pocket 8s to fold right now, and then give up on the river. So you probably want to go a little bigger. Still love the double barrel here on the turn. Rob is going to put in the call. Going to the river, Keating, still with just 9 high, is going to fire the triple barrel here. Goes 160K on this river. Pretty nice sizing. I like this sizing. Just trying to get those sticky 10X hands that did continue on the turn to fold here on the river. He's certainly not trying to make straights fold. He's not trying to make ace-X fold either, because if Rob did float the flop with an ace, he's probably got a hand like ace-3, ace-4, ace-5, ace-deuce, and those hands are all now improved. We see Rob is going to fold. Just really, really nice targeted sizing from Keating on this river. Gets this through against Rob's 7-5. Keating gets it through again. Next hand here, Tony G going to open from the cutoff. Keating's in there in the small blind with 6-5 of clubs. Going to bring JRB along as well. 3 ways to a flop. Checks over to Tony G in the cutoff, who is going to continue here. And look at this, Keating going to call next to act with just 6 high, with just a backdoor straight draw. And again, don't recommend this. He is making plays to splash around to kind of give action, but he's so good at just pressing all the right buttons, at knowing where his opponent's at and knowing how to apply pressure to the specific parts of the range, that he can make this float, which, to be fair, is a losing play. This is losing money overall, but Keating can afford to do this and not just punt. But if most players do this, they are just punting tens of thousands of dollars at EV. Keating is probably punting significantly less. To be fair, this is still a losing play, but he's losing less because he's going to be so precise. Let me show you how he weasels himself out of this hole that he puts himself in. We go to a turn, which is a queen pairing the board. He is now going to donk. I actually really like. Now, donking is going to minimize fold equity. So the plan here is not to get Tony G to fold right here, right now. Keating just realizes when Tony G c-bets on this flop, he either has an ace, some type of big draw, or just air that he's just kind of stabbing here on the flop. Because he realizes here, if Tony G has a hand like Queen X on the flop, he's probably checking back as the pre-flop raiser. The plan is to get an ace to call, to get diamond draws to call, and then apply a ton more pressure on the river. So very unconventional, but just very sharp, astute ranging here. And now, once again, we see the flush draw come in on the river and into a pot of 88,000. Keating goes 70K. Doesn't need to unload the clip here, because really all he's trying to do on this river is get an ace to fold. If Tony G does have a queen once in a while, probably not going to fold to Keating. If Tony G does back into a flush, definitely not folding. So he doesn't need to go massive. Finally, we see Tony G just thinking, you know what, I don't beat anything here. And Tony G actually has ace king. He has ace king of clubs. And once again, Keating gets a sticky player to make a big fold, even with his reputation, just because he so precisely targets exactly what he's trying to fold on this river. All right, next hand here, we're playing 500, 1K, 2K. We see Haralabob open to 6K here from the low jack. Peter is going to call here from the button. That's gonna bring along Brandon in the small blind, and we see Keating here in the straddle. He is going to get in there as well for just another measly 4,000. We are going to a flop king queen 3. I check all the way around to Peter on the button, who's going to stab at it here. We see Keating is going to call next to act, and that's going to send us heads up to a turn. Anaki with 6 of clubs checks over to Peter, and Keating, who just called on the flop after a double barrel here, is now doing a little bit of chatting here on the turn. He's going to think it over. We see him reaching for chips, and he is actually going to put in the big boy check raise here. Keating going to 120,000 now on the turn with just his open in straight draw. Peter now in the tank. He doesn't love it. And this guy, Peter, this guy is sticky. This guy hates to fold, and Peter is in the tank. Must be a pretty scary spot for Keating here, right? This is not the type of guy you want to bluff. Peter going to reluctantly put in the call though, and now Keating in kind of a quandary, going to the river with jack high, and the queen is going to pair on the river, and we see Keating quickly give up, and Peter checks back, and Peter actually has king 10 here and takes the pot. And I know this didn't work, but again, I really like the process, and I actually like checking on this river, because when the board pairs, especially against this sticky player like Peter, he's just going to give Keating way less credit for having a made hand. This cuts down the combos of value hands that Keating could have have. And so Keating just thinking in the spot, hey, you know what? I went for it. I got a really bad river. Let's shut this down because against a sticky player, I'm just not getting folds. And sometimes with jack high even, that is the right play. Keating just once again very, very aware of both his opponent's range and how his opponent is going to play on this particular river card. Really, really like the way Keating played this hand. All right, so the next high level skill that Keating has that you should implement in your game right now is voluptuous value sizing. I really like the word voluptuous. But really, he's just great at choosing the exact size to get his opponents to call when he's got a made hand, whether he knows his opponent has a weak range and he needs to go very, very small to get a call, or he knows his opponent has a strong range and he's got a nutted hand and he can just go absolutely huge. So let me show you a few examples. All right, so next hand, we are playing 100, 200. Keating raises to 900 from the cutoff. Shout out to Ron Motherzucker for tagging this hand for me. Lex Veldhuis, I don't know how to say his last name. He's a great streamer, Lex. I'm just gonna call him Lex. Lex is gonna call from the small blind, and Phil Hellmuth is going to come in from the big blind as well with ace king. And look at that sweet baby there. Keating flops top set. He is not gonna slow play. He knows his image. He knows these guys think he's full of shit. So he is just going to c-bet here. He goes 2K, and look at this. Lex going to take the bait and check raise right here, right now. Keating on this board going to give Lex a little bit of rope, figuring that if Lex has 2s or 3s, they're gonna get all the money in anyway. And if Lex is bluffing, let him continue bluffing. We go to a turn, which is the king of hearts, and now Lex actually checks. And here's where the hand gets super interesting. Keating actually sizes up on this turn. He goes nearly pot here, which I really, really like. The reason why I like this is because when Lex check raises the flop and then checks the turn, he either has a give up, some hand that's just done with this, maybe a hand like 5-6 suited that's just done with this no matter what. He went for it, he's just giving up, or he's got some type of showdown value hand here now that just is planning to check call. Maybe a hand like ace 7, maybe a hand like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, something like that. So I really, really like this big size. Keating just once again just really dialed in with his opponent's range, choosing this big size here on the turn. We go to a river. Lex checks again. Pot is nearly 59K, and Keating just puts Lex all in on this river, just kind of figuring, hey, if he's got a hand like pocket 8s, he's folding. We could go small and make sure those hands call, but Keating is just going for gold here. He figures if this guy check raised with some type of backdoor king X hand, he's never folding. If he does have pocket deuces or pocket 3s that played this hand super weird and checked the turn, he's never folding. Keating here just targeting the top of his opponent's range. Lex puts in the call. We see Lex has king 4 of diamonds. He did have one of those hands that turned showdown value that check raised the flop, and Keating gets paid in the spot. I think a lot of players would not go for this 2x pot size jam on the river. They wouldn't go for the big bet on the turn, and Keating once again wins more money than most players would win in this spot. Just absolutely voluptuous value sizing. All right, I'm gonna warn you guys, this next hand, Keating looks like a psychic, like he is somehow reading his opponent's mind. It's almost like he can see the Matrix, but he's not guessing, he's not Neo, right? He's just built one skill that 99% of players never develop. He just ranges his opponents so fast, it's like their cards are face up, and this changes everything. This is the skill we've been drilling inside Basecamp, our new live coaching experience built for serious players who don't have time to waste. If you're wondering about our old crash course, we killed it. This is the evolution. Basecamp is tighter, sharper, and built to give you clarity in 5 days flat. Small groups, real feedback. Everybody else will think you're the action player, but you will know better while you are taking their stacks. All right, so this hand, like I said, Keating looks like a psychic here. This hand here, we see Hanks going to limp in the third blind. Keating going to check his option with 8 deuce in the straddle. We're playing 200, 400, 800, 1600. And now here on the flop, Keating going to flop to pair with the 8 deuce. He's going to start going big right away. We go to a turn, and this is where the magic happens. Hanks is going to check it over again and into a 9.8K pot. Keating now goes 15K. Here's why this is so good. If Hanks was just floating with a hand like king high or ace high or something like that, well, he's probably folding on this turn if Keating breathes on the pot. But if Hanks did have some type of showdown value, maybe a hand like pocket 5s, 4x, 6s, because if he did have a weak 8 that checked on the flop, well, he is not planning to check fold on this turn. So whether Keating goes big or whether Keating goes small, the same range is going to continue on this turn. So he may as well go massive here. So Keating goes 15K. We see Hanks is actually going to think about it. it. Let's show his cards right away. He's got 10-9. For some inexplicable reason, he's just going to jam here. We see Keating is going to snap it off. And look at this. All of a sudden, we're playing a 236K pot. We're going to run it twice. King on the first board, ace on the second board. Keating going to hold, scooping a very nice pot. Just really, really love this turn sizing, not letting Hanks off the hook here, going really, really big. And Hanks does punt, but Keating sizing just super, super dialed in this hand once again. All right, so this one is beautiful. The 3K straddle is on. Of course, J Boogs opens to 9K in the hijack, and Keating is in there defending with King Deuce offsuit, and J Boogs starting this hand 10 big blinds effective, right? 10 big blinds. So yeah, not going to be a profitable defend, but that's neither here nor there. Keating's got a reputation to uphold, right? So flop goes check, check, and now Keating just going to come out and go very, very small here on this turn, just milking J Boogs here, realizing that J Boogs would just bet at this stack depth all the time if he had an ace on the flop. We're gonna go to a river. Pot is 24K, and Keating with second pair, absolutely no kicker. He is going to go for value again. Yes, he is going for value for 2 streets with second pair here. Understanding his reputation, goes 6K here on the river, gets paid with King Deuce. And yeah, this call is not going to be profitable, but Keating is just making up for it with these plays he's making post flop. Super, super thin value, just targeting the exact hand that J Boogs has here and getting 2 streets in a spot where most players would get 0. All right, another great thin value spot. This one, Keating opening to 3K in the cutoff. We're playing 2-4-8. Kaufman get a call on the button. Wesley and Hanks come along in the blinds, and Mickey, who's going to be the villain in this hand, is in there in the 3rd blind. So we are going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways to a flop here. 15K in the pot, and Mickey actually going to donk here into multiple people. Keating is going to call with top pair. Hanks comes along as well. He overcalls. 3 on the turn. Mickey going to donk again. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if this guy could spell donk. And look at this. Keating going to raise here on the turn and choose a big size just with top pair, no kicker, picking up on a really, really big tell here that when Mickey donks twice and chooses small sizings, he's just not going to have a hand that's better than 8x here. He's just not going to have a hand that's better than Keating's, and Keating just knowing this guy is insanely sticky, sometimes just can't even read what's on the board, and just realizing that he's got a very strong hand here. It looks very thin, but he's raising for value here on this turn. We go to a river, which is an ace. You can't love to see it's an overcard. Most players in Keating's spot would just check back here on this river after getting all that value on the turn, but not Keating. Keating bets again, going 15K, little baby 10% pot bet on this river, and milks Mickey with just a pair of 8s here, wins 177K pot. Just understanding, hey, this guy can't even spell milk. He's not going to understand what's going on, so I may as well milk him. Keating just getting really, really nice value on this river. We see Mickey actually has pocket 6s here. Keating with a very, very astute raise on this turn and a really, really nice 15K value bet on the river. All right, this next hand, one of my absolute favorites here. Some really, really advanced stuff going on in this hand. Let's break it down. We're going to pick this one up. Hanks limps from up front, and Keating is going to ISO to 5K on the button with King, Queen of Hearts. Hanks is going to call, and we see Keating flops top pair here, and he is going to c-bet, and Hank's going to put in the check raise, and once again, Keating just understanding, hey, may as well give my opponent rope here. If he's got a better hand, he is ahead of me, and if he's bluffing with an airball, let's let him continue bluffing. And now the turn is a 3 of hearts, giving Keating a flush draw to go along with his top pair. And when Hanks checks it over, he actually decides to check this back, which I really, really love with his exact hand, because Keating in this spot, I'm imagining he's thinking, well, if my opponent checks on this turn, he's either giving up, so we want to give him a little bit more rope, let him bluff on the river possibly, or occasionally, and this is not going to be frequently, but he's got some type of super strong hand that he's trapping with and trying to get us to bet here. I wouldn't expect this a lot. Let's flash back to this hand versus Lex, where Keating decides to go for the pot size bet on the turn. Because an overcard comes in here, he figures Lex has has a lot of showdown value that just is not going to check fold. So he realizes that getting the value against the showdown value portion of Lex's range is going to outperform checking back and letting Lex bluff on the river. This hand, much different. The turn is a blank. So Keating just figuring here, if Hanks does have a hand like Queen X, he'd keep firing. If he's got a hand like deuces or eights, he'd keep firing. So Keating, very astutely, just realizing that Hanks doesn't have a bunch of showdown value here, that he's weighted towards mostly air, so he's going to check back in this spot. We go to a river, which is the ace of hearts. Look at that, giving Keating the nuts. Now, Hanks on this river going to come out and bet 25K. We've talked about this concept before. When a player comes out on a nut-changing river and comes out and bets, this means that they are polarized. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean they're polarized? They either have a very strong hand or they have air. Keating in this spot is just going to put in the monster raise here on this river. He's not going to go small. When Hanks bets 25K, Keating is going to raise to 130K, going more than 5x on this river. He's thinking, hey, Hanks either backed into 2-pair here or has an ace, or he's got nothing. So if Hanks has nothing on this river, if he's just bluffing, it doesn't matter what size Keating goes to, all that stuff is folding anyway. But if Hanks backed into an ace, if he backed into 2-pair, he's not folding. So when our opponents are representing a polar range on the river, love to go huge with our value and very, very small with our bluffs. If we got to this river somehow with a hand like 10-9, we could just click it. We're not getting Hanks to fold an ace or 2-pair or something like that. Get maybe his Jack 10 or maybe his weird king high bluffs on the flop to fold. Great spot right here to go absolutely huge with value and very, very small with a bluff raise when our opponent is representing a polarized range. We see Hanks does have ace 7 on this river. He did check raise with an air ball. We see Keating checked back on the turn. Now on this river, Hanks gonna put in the call and Keating shows him the bad news. Just really, really, really nicely played hand here. All right, next hand we're playing 2-4-8, 1600, and we see JR going to complete in the big blind here. Once again, Keating is in the straddle where he feels most comfortable. He's playing all the hands in the straddle. He's gonna bump it up with 10-9 of diamonds, and we are going to a flop. Keating flopping open-ended here, going to c-bet. JR is going to call. Innocuous 3 of diamonds on the turn. Keating just deducing that his opponent is capped when he check calls on a wet dynamic board. So he is going to put in the big boy size here, going 35K, just over pot. Would like it if he went 45, maybe 50, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. I love the big size here on the turn. We're going to a river. Look at that sweet baby there. And Keating makes the nuts here on this river. And when JR checks it over, Keating, he's not thinking in this spot, I made big hand, so I do big bet, right? He's going to jam here for 3x pot on this river, but I promise you that is not what he's thinking. When the Jack of Hearts comes, JR is just going to have a lot of strong hands here. He's gonna have hands like Queen Jack. He's gonna have hands like Jack 8, Jack 7 suited. He's going to have a bunch of strong hands. If he does have a queen in his hand, he probably has a straight blocker as well when he just limp calls preflop. A hand like Queen 9 or Queen 10. So Keating just realizes that JR getting to this river, he's either got a brick flush draw and he's folding, or he has top pair or 2-pair. And given his image, this is a horrible spot to bluff for a big size, because if JR does have top pair or 2-pair, he's just not folding. Great spot to bluff for a small size. Just get him to fold all of his brick club draws. And it looks simple, right? Big hand, big bet, but so many players just blunder this. They let fear guide their decision and go for the size that rewards that dopamine hit the most often. You choose the size where your opponents call the most, you get the dopamine hit, but you choose this big boy size after correctly deducing what JR's range actually is, and you end up maximizing what you actually make. Just another really, really astute decision from Keating here. JR not gonna look, he's gonna put in the call. He's got Jack 8, gonna be showing the bad news, and Keating gets paid once again. All right, this next one, absolutely beautiful. We're playing 500, 1K, 2K. You see Keating once again is in the straddle. He's somehow always in the straddle. Airball raises from the hijack. Peter calls on the button, and Keating is in there from the straddle with 6-4 of spades. And flops bottom to pair here, and airball is going to c-bet into a couple of people here. Peter gonna get out of the way, and Keating is just going to call with bottom 2. And this I really, really love, the 4 pairs on the turn. And Keating actually, we saw him do this as a bluff before. Now he's gonna do it as value. And that's not to say he should be balanced here. He's probably doing this for two different reasons. Look, I can't get inside his head, but I would do this for two different reasons. Keating comes out and donks here. And the thing about donking is it minimizes fold equity. So Keating coming out and donking here on the turn is going to keep airball around with hands that he might have checked back himself on this board pairing turn. Keating comes out with a 2.5x overbet here on this river, targeting 10x and overpairs. If he's got those hands, figuring airball is not folding when he takes this line. If he's got pocket sevens or 6x or in this spot, whatever, let's just go for gold against the strong portions of his range, because he does have a bunch of very strong portions of his range that just aren't folding. Really love this turn donk to minimize fold equity. Gets value from all parts of airball's range on the turn. And now on the river, he just targets the very top of airball's range. We see here airball does actually have pocket sevens. Don't want to be results oriented. Really like the size against hands like 10x or pocket jacks. Airball does fold, but once again, I think a really, really nice size from Keating here. All right, the next high level skill I noticed that Keating has that allows him to crush these games is multi-way mastery. I'm sorry, I'm a really big fan of the alliterations today. I like them. I like them a lot. All right, so this hand, an absolute masterclass in how to play multi-way, picking up on cues. We're playing 1K with a 2K big blind ante. Peter going to open from under the gun over to Keating here with Queen 10 offsuit. He's in the cutoff. He is in there. Folds around to Jack in the small blind, who is going to squeeze here. These players all start this hand very, very deep. We're talking Keating is 800 plus big blinds effective with these guys. Jack gonna squeeze. Peter's in there. Keating is last to act with a garbage hand, but he is last to act. Jack going to come out and fire here on this flop for 35K. Peter next to act is going to call. And now at this point, Keating is going to pounce. There's a couple things going on here. One, Jack squeezed from the small blind, which Keating understands he's not going to hit this board hard. Even a loose kind of aggressive player, when they squeeze from out of position, it's going to be good hands. And this board, Jack's just really not going to have sets, two pair, straights. And when Peter calls next to act, Keating just thinking here, hey, maybe Peter sometimes traps next to act, but when the board is this wet and this dynamic, Peter did have a hand like 7 6s, 7 6. Peter would just start piling in more money right now. So Keating going to take that as his cue to pounce with absolutely nothing here, putting in a raise right here, right now on the flop. Jack is undeterred. He is going to put in the call, and that is eventually going to bring Peter along as well. At this point, once both players call, this is what I really love about Keating, just really good situational awareness. He's like, okay, I thought in this spot that I could get this through. It would look really strong, but once we get called in two spots, this is just really, really concerning. The turn doesn't really change anything. Peter can just have some traps here still, and I don't know if this guy Jack with an SPR of 1 is going to fold a hand like queens, kings, aces. So Keating just astutely realizing that, and he's just like, okay, I took my shot. I'm going to check back. I'm going to shut it down here on this turn. River now an ace of diamonds, which is super, super interesting, because now at this point, Jack checks, Peter checks. When both of these players now check, Jack doesn't really have any flushes on this river, right? Because he squeezed from the small blind. Keating also has a 10 of diamonds in his hand. Really, really hard for Jack to have a flush, unless he specifically has a hand like king, queen of diamonds, and that hand would probably just come out and bet from Jack here on this river. Peter, very, very hard for Peter to have a flush. When the turn checks back, it looks like Keating is just giving up. So if Peter had a flush on this river, he would probably try to bet to target an overpair from Jack to get called. So Keating just realizes, hey, neither of these guys has a flush. I can have flushes here all the time. He's telling a credible story. Everything got there on the river. So this is just really, really nice from Keating. Going for it on the flop with an air ball. When both players call, just realizing Peter can have traps, giving it up on the turn. And now when the river changes things, when it looks like, hey, I could have a flush here all the time, going to be really, really hard for either of these guys to have a flush. Let's put in the money. Keating goes all in here. We see Jack actually has pocket queens. Jack is going to lay that one down. And we see Peter here with pocket jacks on this river. So Keating just a beautiful, beautiful bluff spot. Guess what? Peter's going to call because he's never met a hand that he didn't want to call with on the river. But once again, need to distance the process from the results. I think the process really, really beautiful in this hand. Keating is not punting into strong ranges. Very, very good at just assigning his opponents exactly what they have. This one doesn't get through. Maybe against Peter, maybe against this specific player, maybe not the most profitable spot because this guy just called with jacks without a diamond, but against the player pool, even the high stakes stream games, this is going to be super, super profitable, just showing how good Keating is at ranging. All right, this next one here, gonna pick it up. It limps all the way around to Keating in the small blind, who's gonna bump it up to 3K with 10-6 of clubs. And look at this, he's going to get 1, 2, 3, 4 calls. We are going 5 ways to a flop here. Keating flopping top pair, just going to come out and bet here 5 ways. J-Boog's gonna call next to act. Steve is going to come along as well. And now we see 3 coin is just going to move all in for 41K at this point. And back around to Keating. I really, really love this. This is more of the multi-way mastery here. Just realizing, okay, he's ahead of enough of 3 coins. Range here can be doing this with draws. 8X can be doing it with whatever. It's 3 coin. Keating in this spot just bet 3 betting, but he min clicks it. He min click bet 3 bets. And here's the reason why this is so good. He's going to shut out the players behind him and deny their equity and get it heads up against 3 coin. Could just be punting with any combination of cards. This guy is wild, right? And the really nice thing about just bet 3 bet clicking this, let's look at their exact cards. J-Boogs has 9-7 of clubs and Steve has jack 10 here. So Steve actually has a better hand. And by bet 3 bet clicking this, if J-Boogs or Steve did wake up with an occasional trap, he's not concerned about J-Boogs. J-Boogs is short. If he has a trap, whatever. But by bet 3 bet clicking this, he shuts out Steve and he just knows Steve never has a trap. Once it goes bet and then J-Boogs calls and then Steve calls after J-Boogs calls, he realizes if Steve did have a hand like 10-8 or pocket 3s or a super strong hand, he would just raise after it went bet call in front of him. He just gets to shut out Steve behind him who actually has a better hand. This is really, really nice. See, J-Boogs is actually going to fold his equity, just a really tough spot for him. And Steve here with jack 10 is going to fold as well. Just a really, really, really astute spot from Keating once again. 3 coin actually ace jack with the ace of spades here. They're going to run it once, turn a 4 of spades, and we are going to the river. Like, what is he thinking with ace jack with the ace of spades? I'm not really sure, but hey, 6 on the river, and Keating is going to take this one. All right, next spot of multi-way mastery here. Keating going to open to 2K with pocket 8s. Kaufman, Hanks, and Mickey is in there in the big blind as well. Going to a flop, king deuce 8, and Keating here actually flopping middle set, pot 8.4K, and Mickey, as he often does, is just going to come out and donk here for God knows what reason. This time, Mickey's actually going to size big. He sizes 7K into 8 here, so almost a pot-sized donk, and Keating just picking this up. When a player donks heads up, particularly for a small size, this is going to be weak. But when a player donks multi-way into 4, 5 other players and they choose the big size, this is just strength. They are not messing around. So Keating just realizing this, multi-way mastery, picking this up, putting in a raise right away, even though the board is bone dry, just figuring Mickey's not going to fold when he donks for nearly a pot size. So Keating just putting in money right away against what he knows is a strong range from his opponent. Mickey is going to call, turn a queen of spades over to Keating here. Gonna keep firing, 35K here on the turn. This is what's going through Mickey's head in this spot. 1,000, 2,000, 6, 4,000, call. Going to a river, which is a queen, pairing the board over to Keating, and he's going to go 110,000, nearly pot size on this river. We see Mickey here does have king 4, so he flopped top pair. Like I said, when they donk multi-way for a large size, they just have a pretty good hand. This, to Mickey, to be fair, is a pretty good hand. He's still learning how to spell poker. So Mickey eventually going to put in the call here. And Keating just winning a very, very nice pot against a naked top pair from Mickey. You see, he's upset. He can't believe it. He can't believe it. I'm surprised that he even realized that he was beat. But Keating going to scoop another nice pot, multi-way mastery. All right, next hand here, Keating going to open on the button with king queen to 5K. We're playing 2, 4, 8, 16 again. Hanks is in there in the small blind, and Mickey coming along once again in the straddle here. So we are going 3 ways to a flop. Jack 8-6. So once again, Mickey gonna come out and donk. Notice the difference. Mickey going to donk for a small size here, 6K into 15K, where last time with top pair, he donked for nearly pot. So Keating just picking up on this. You may be wondering, well, why is he calling and not raising when he knows that Mickey likely has a weaker range? And if they're bluffing, you would love for them to put in another bet on the turn, then you can raise. And if they're value betting, you know when they choose a size, they don't have top of range, and then you can, again, raise on the turn, or just put in a big bet on the turn. By just calling, you allow your opponent to put in a bet when they are bluffing, and you get 2 streets from the bluffing portion of your opponent's range. We go to a turn, which is a deuce of clubs, going to check over to Keating in this spot, who now is going to start applying pressure here. He's going to put in the big boy bet 30K. Hanks is going to call, and would you look at that, the 5 of clubs on the river. Keating actually runners into a queen high flush, and on this river he's gonna bet for value. He's going to get paid, but that's not the crux of the hand. The thing I want to point out is, once again, just floating on the flop, realizing that Mickey has a weak range when he chooses that size, picking up these little clues, picking up these little pieces of the puzzle multi-way, and kind of tying it all together one step at a time. We see Hanks here in this hand ends up having king jack with the jack of clubs. Keating gets paid again. All right, next high level skill from Keating. Even as a guy who's just always driving the action, he is willing to make some fantastic folds. Let me show you. All right, we're playing 500, 1K, 2K. Keating opens to 10K with pocket Kigglies here. He's gonna get called from Brandon in the big blind, and that's gonna bring Stanley DoorDash Millionaire along in the straddle as well. We're going 3 ways to a flop, and 5-5-3, pretty innocuous here. Going to check over to Keating. He's betting for value, does not believe in pot control, 25K. Stanley here on this flop is going to call. We're going to a turn, which is the ace of diamonds. Stanley gonna check. Keating quickly gonna check this one back. A 6 on the river. Look at this. Stanley going to come out on this river and go 50K. So not even a huge bet. And Keating on this river. Look, I'm not inside his head, but here's what I'd be thinking if I was in his spot. This is massively under-bluffed. It's really hard for Stanley to be bluffing here because he'd have to be turning something like 6-7 or 6-4 into a bluff here. Otherwise, the gut shots kind of got there. If he was floating with an ace, he got there. If he was trapping on the flop with trips, well, he's there as well, right? It's just really, really hard to find bluffs in the spot. We see Keating just making the quick fold with pocket kings, no sweat on this river. All right, next one here. I believe the 3.2K straddle is on. Hank's going to limp in the big blind. JRB is in there in the first straddle. He's raising to 20K, and now Keating is just going to flat in the 3.2K straddle with pocket jacks, and that is going to bring Hanks along as well. We're going 3 ways to a flop. Queen 8-4, and it's going to check over to Keating. He's going to check it back with pocket jacks here on this flop. Hank's going to check again on the turn. JRB is going to start firing now at this point. He goes 55 into 61, and Keating checked back this flop so he could call on the turn and probably just call down a lot in this spot. So he's gonna put in the call. River is a 7, bringing in a 1-liner to a straight. And remember, JRB bumped it up pre-flop from the straddle here. He just shouldn't really have a lot of 6X in this spot when he raises over a limp to 20K. But now we see JRB comes out and bets 120,000 into 171 on the river, and Keating starts putting the pieces together. When players choose this size, when they start putting in a significant amount of money on a card that looks like it hits Keating's range, right? This card is scary for JRB. It looks like Keating could have a hand like 8-6, 6-4. So just a pretty scary card for JRB to be bluffing. Keating going to put the pieces together. A lot of players in the spot would be like, well, I checked back the flop with pocket jacks so I could call across the turn and the river. I played pot control so I could call down and snap my opponent off when they're bluffing here. But Keating, just a very, very good hand reader, realizing that this is just a very scary spot for JRB to run it. And we see Keating going to make the fold with his jacks. His hand hand, under rep the entire way. Check back the flop, just flatted pre-flop. But we see JRB here has 9-6 of clubs for the nuts here. Keating once again gets away. I know it looks psychic. It looks like he knows something that we don't, but really in this spot, he's just a very, very good hand reader, very good at ranging, putting the pieces together. All right, this next hand, I'm telling you, it is wild. All right, so Charles going to open to 6K on the button. Keating going to call from the small blind with ace-5 offsuit. Don't recommend this one at home, but neither here nor there. He is in there. Ben coming along in the big blind as well. So we're playing 1K, 2K. On this flop, Keating flopping a double belly buster, and it's going to check through. We go to a turn, which is an 8. Keating gonna start bluffing at this after the flop checks through. He's gonna go 15K. Ben puts in the call, and that's gonna bring Charles along as well. So 3 ways going to the river. And would you look at that sweet baby there? Keating actually makes the straight here on the river. He's actually going to check. He's going to check and try to spring the trap here. Checks all the way over to Charles on the button. Wants somebody to just stab here. He figures there's 2 players in position. Someone would stab here occasionally. Like if Ben had a bricked heart draw, he would just always stab here. Charles goes 40K, and now Keating going to go for some value. Figuring if Charles does back into like a set here or some type of 2 pair, he's not going to be able to fold. So Keating raises to 210,000 with his straight. Charles going to look pained. Look how pained he looks here, furrowing his eyebrows. Now look at this. We're going to get the bet 3-bet from Charles on this river. And look how fast this is. Keating in real time folds in under 3 seconds. We see Charles has 10-9 here on this river. Once again, Keating just willing to make those big boy folds. All right, another one playing 1K, 2K here. Stanley's going to open from under the gun. Keating on the button is in there with 9 deuce of spades, and JRB is going to squeeze in the big blind here. Stanley's in. That's going to bring along Keating and Ben as well. 4 ways to a flop here. Once again, 9 deuce of spades for Keating. About as good as you can ask for with 9 deuce of spades. Flops a combo draw. JRB gonna go 25K. Stanley gonna call next to act. Keating is just gonna start piling in money right now, because even if you don't have a ton of fold equity here, right? When JRB just comes out and bets into this many people, he's got a good hand. When Stanley calls next to act, he could have some traps here. But Keating just realizes when you have a bunch of equity in your hand, you don't need a whole shit ton of fold equity, right? Even if your opponents just fold a little, well, you're gonna get there a bunch of the time. So Keating going to put in the raise right here, right now with the combo draw. And now we're going to see Ben put in the 3-bet here after JRB bets into multiple people. Keating raises and Ben's gonna 3-bet. He makes it 280K. That's gonna knock out JRB. It's gonna knock out Stanley. Back over to Keating here on the button. He's already in quite the pickle here, but figuring maybe I'm doing okay against hands like pocket 7s, pocket 8s. So Keating going to put in the call here begrudgingly. Turn now a 6 of hearts, pairing the board. And now at this point, Ben going to go all in. Keating at this point now just, he's willing to make the big fold. Because if Ben did have a set on the flop, Keating is now drawing dead against those hands. If Ben did have a straight on the flop, well, Keating is drawing very thinly against those hands. And again, you think like, okay, well, a relatively standard fold, but like for an action player in an action game against an action recreational player, just really, really willing to always make these big disciplined folds in the right spot. So just another example of that. And you may be thinking, how is Keating so willing to make these big folds on the river? And he's exploiting a tendency of the player population, whether they are playing in these high stakes stream games or whether they're playing in your local 2-5 game. So let me explain. In this hand, Texas Mike opens to 8K. Keating in there in the big blind with Jack 5 of spades. We're going heads up to a flop. Look at that sweet baby there. Texas Mike gonna fire here. Keating is in there with top pair, an ace on the turn. He checks it over, and Texas Mike here on this turn is going to double barrel, and not the best card for Keating, right? You don't love to see this against the pre-flop raiser, especially for a big bet, 40 into 49 here, but Keating is not even going to hesitate, and he is going to call. And we're going to go to the river, which is a queen. Keating is going to check it over for the 3rd time. Texas Mike gonna check back here on the river. river, and Keating going to win with just a pair of jacks. And maybe wondering, well, how is he exploiting the player tendencies in this hand? The pool does not fire enough triple barrels, particularly on ace-high boards. They massively under-bluff. And Keating just leveraging this fact, right? He's just leveraging that the player pool is under triple barreling. And he knows here, if a player is under triple barreling, that means you can call so much wider on the turn because they're not going to barrel you off your equity on the river. So in equilibrium, calling with second pair, calling with third pair on the turn may be a punt, because in equilibrium, they're going to fire again on the river and you're going to be in a shit spot. But in actuality, in practicality, in real games, players just aren't going to fire that triple barrel. Keating knows this. He gets sticky on the turn, just knowing that he can fold the river if he faces the triple, but river goes check, check, and Keating wins. All right, the final high-level skill that makes Keating so good is the courageous calls. I'm sorry, I'm done with the alliterations. All right, so this one playing 2-4-8. We're going to see Ben open from the hijack raised to 2.5K. Bob on the button is actually going to 3-bet now, and as Keating likes to do, he is going to cold call with 4-3 offsuit. Why? Well, you got to get the VPIP up, I guess. But he's going to make up for it post-flop. Don't recommend this. Don't condone this. He's putting on a show, and he's doing a great job of it. But no matter how good your ranging is, this isn't going to be profitable. But Keating's going to make it less bad than most people. And we see Ben here is now going to put in the 4-bet. And Keating at this point, he's gonna call with 4-3 off, because why the hell not? Keating flops a wheel draw and a 3-high flush draw, checks it over to Ben. Ben gonna go small, Keating calls. Look at that, Keating makes a 3-high flush, checks it over to Ben once again. Now here on this turn with 4 diamonds out there, Ben is going to think it over, and he is going to check it back. Going to the river, which is another ace at this point, and Keating is going to check it over one more time. Now Ben going to reach for chips, and he is going to go 58K here. Keating just deducing in this spot. If Ben had a hand, pocket kings with the king of diamonds, he would probably just keep betting on the turn. If he had a hand like ace king with the king of diamonds, he would just keep betting on the turn. Even if he had a hand like pocket queens, he may just bet on the turn. So Keating just figuring this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He's gonna call with just the 3 of diamonds here. And once again, yeah, he's splashing around pre-flop, but post-flop, it all comes back to putting your opponent on a range and putting the pieces together. And Keating is doing that in these games as well as anyone. Big shout out to JJ for tagging this hand for me. Steve's gonna open a 1.4K. Peter's going to call on the button. Keating is in there in the big blind with 9-7 of diamonds. Ace king 7, so Keating flops bottom pair. Steve's going to c-bet here, and now Peter is actually going to raise next to act, and Keating looking down at his hand just thinking, holy shit, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because Peter's an aggressive player. If he had ace king, he would certainly be 3-betting pre-flop. If he had ace or kings, for sure, 3-betting. Keating just looking down, noticing that he has a 7 in his hand, and thinking, hey, it's really hard for Peter to have a value hand here. Hard for Peter to have a hand like pocket 7s or king 7 or ace 7 suited when Keating has 9-7 of diamonds. So Keating just putting in the bet 3-bet here, just thinking, hey, Peter's probably got just like a bunch of draws here. I've got a 7 in my hand, really hard for Peter to have something. So Keating's going to bet 3-bet to shut Steve out of the hand. Steve folds, now Peter calls, and we're going to a turn. And at this point, Keating's going to keep firing here, kind of a combo bet, putting a ton of pressure on ace X hands like ace jack, ace 10. And he's also just getting value when Peter does have a draw here. And once again, Keating probably just thinking here, hey, Peter just doesn't have a ton of 2-pair or sets. And now when Peter raises this turn, Keating's bullshit meter has to be going off at a high alarm here. Beep, beep, beep. And just thinking, hey, this doesn't make any sense, right? Even if Peter had a hand like king 7 here, would he be raising on this turn? Probably not. So Keating actually going to start using his hand as a bluff catcher, and he's going to call here on this turn. River now an offsuit 4. Keating checks it over. Peter goes 235K, and Keating in the spot thinking, hey, he either has pocket 7s or he's got nothing. Would Peter even play this way with a hand like ace 7 or king 7? Probably not. So he's got 7s or he's got nothing. And Keating with a 7 in his hand, just again putting the pieces together, this just doesn't make sense. Keating flicks at the call. Peter shows 6-3 of spades, and once again, courageous call. Keating wins. All right, next one here. I love this hand. This is so good. All right, so airball raises to 6K from the low jack. We're playing 500 1K 2K. Keating is in there in the big line with 8-4 offsuit. He's just playing anything. He's like, screw it, I'm gonna outplay them. Hurrah, Bob. folds in the straddle. Look at that. He flops 2 pair. It's that easy. He checks it over to Airball, who is going to c-bet. Keating going to put in the check raise right here, right now. And he's not going to choose a baby size, right? He's going to go 7x. Is that 7x? I'm not good at math. I think he goes 7x. Big boy size. Like, we endorse that size. That is a good size. We love the big check raise size. Going to a turn which pairs the board. Keating going to keep going for value here, which is unconventional, right? Because he now loses to overpairs. He just realizes Airball is a sticky guy. He's not going to be folding 8x. He's probably not even folding hands like 5s through 7s. Definitely not folding diamond draws. So Keating going for some thin value here. Airball is going to raise. And just like in that last hand with Peter, this just doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, because if Airball had an overpair here, would he raise on this turn? No, doesn't make sense. If Airball had a hand like pocket 4s or pocket 8s, would he raise on this turn? No, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So Airball in this spot pretty much repping a 3 or nothing. And you know, I don't like saying the B word, blockers. But Keating having the 8 and 4 in his hand makes it even harder for Airball to have 8s or 4s in the spot. Keating is going to call here on this turn, and we're gonna go to a river. River's an ace. Keating going to check it over, and Airball is going to fire on this river. He's got balls. We'll give him that. He definitely has balls to fire on this river. He goes 525K. This is a serious bet, serious money. Big boy bluff on this river. But Keating, he's trying to sniff this one out. Once again, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Looking over at Airball, staring delicately into his eyes. He says, screw it. He puts in the call. Airball has 6-5 of diamonds here, and Keating wins another one. Just very, very good at ranging. If you want to make plays like Keating in this video, not just guess, but know when to go big, when to size small, when to give up, that's exactly what we train inside of Basecamp. It's not a course, it's 5 days of interactive coaching with a small group of serious players. You'll learn how to range fast, size right, and most importantly, think clearly in every single spot. It's brand new and spots are limited, so when you're ready to level up, I will see you there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you and have a gentle